Lone Rider here, and I wanted to talk about something that's related to archery. Um, Now, it's also kind of related to the concept of gun control. I don't own any guns, but I have shot them, and it's pretty fun. But I do shoot bows. I have my recurve, store-bought recurve, and I have homemade hickory longbow and a flat bow. Um, and so I shoot arrows, and I consider myself a shooter. And when things come up in the news with gun control once again being voiced, as you often have after these mass shootings and so forth, um, it bothers me. It bothers me because even though I primarily shoot bows, as a shooter, I can see how such rules would unduly affect innocent people who haven't hurt anybody. And you know, with guns, a lot of people are scared of guns, and especially people who don't know anything about them. So, a lot of times when you talk, for example, about limiting magazine capacity, um, you know, people you're talking about guns, and so people get very nervous and they figure, well, fewer bullets is safer. The person can do less damage with them. And that seems to somebody who doesn't know anything about guns, that seems kind of reasonable offhand. Uh, but a concept that's truly valid is applicable as a concept across the board. So, would limiting ammunition capacity make sense if you were talking about, let's say, bows and arrows? Now, when you're shooting a gun, your ammunition is your bullets, your projectile, and your casing containing propellant and primer. What is your ammunition when you're shooting a bow? Well, your arrows, right? This particular one's aluminum, but they make them out of carbon and wood as well. Um, these are your ammunition. So now, when I shoot, I typically don't just carry one arrow. I don't know anybody who does. In fact, I don't just carry three or four or five. I usually carry about a dozen. If I'm going to the outdoor archery range, which is, could be 45 minutes drive, I usually carry, at least a dozen arrows. Why? Am I going to shoot all of them necessarily? No. I might shoot 6 or 8 at a time. But I carry more than that because I never know if I'm going to need them. If I miss and lose an arrow in the brush, if an arrow gets broken or damaged, the knock comes off, it gets bent, whatever, a rubber flight comes off, um, then I'm not able to use it. And if I only brought so many arrows and I lost one, I lost another one, I broke another one, next thing you know, I've got like three. Right? And with the archery range nearly an hour away, I'm not going to drive home to get more. So I don't take all of them with me, but I take a hefty bundle. Right? For those people who think that saying, well, let's say you can only have so many bullets in your magazine, makes sense. Let's say 6 bullets is the thing that's being thrown around now. That guy on Saturday Night Live made that joke about, well, how about you only have 6 bullets, and if you can't hit anything with that, then you should have took karate classes. We're supposed to find this funny as the audience, but I don't really find it all that funny when somebody is flagrantly illustrating their total lack of knowledge about firearms. I mean, a limit of 6 bullets would essentially mean that any semi-automatic firearm, handgun, rifle, shotgun, would be illegal. You'd be left with single and double barrel weapons and maybe some revolvers if they only held 6 shots. Um, Now, obviously, he's not. This isn't something. On one hand, not supposed to take it seriously. It's a joke. On the other hand, if you're a shooter, you kind of have to take it seriously because when people make jokes about sentiments like that, a lot of times it ultimately, at the end of the day, can get followed up by political action. And well, this guy might not be ready to go and lobby Congress tomorrow to go take all your guns away. He certainly wouldn't be joking about it if he didn't think it was something that he agreed with. So, is he dead serious? maybe not, but he certainly means it. Um, and of course, that would affect a lot of people. I mean, most modern handguns are semi-automatic, and there's a lot of people who own semi-automatic rifles and even some semi-automatic shotguns. And basically, you'd be saying you can't own anything that's made with technology invented after 1890, right? Um, but people seem to think it's reasonable because you're talking about guns. Let's talk about arrows. If somebody said to you, you can only have, not just you, but every archer in the country, and keep in mind, we're talking about a person who doesn't do archery. So if a person who doesn't do archery and knew nothing about archery was to say to every archer in the country that you can only have 6 arrows, would that strike you as reasonable? I think most people would look at it and say, something wrong there, right? And more to the point, I think if you were an archer and you had some guy who didn't know anything about archery trying to tell everybody in the country who was an archer how many arrows they could carry in their quiver, I think, the average archer's response would be, "You're a moron. Why should I listen to you?" You know. So let's put things in perspective. With guns, a lot of times people get so scared and so worked up. Oh, well, let's just ban this or ban that or restrict this or restrict that. If you take the subject away from guns and you just talk about ammunition as ammunition, well, when you do archery, what's your ammunition? Your arrows. Would it make sense to tell every archer in the country they can only have 6 arrows? Um, think about it. And guess what? If it doesn't make sense with arrows, it doesn't really make sense with guns either. I mean, come on.